70% of self-made millionaires are neurodivergent. These reports, which hold no foundation, saying that, oh, ADHD is just a fad, it's just something that everyone's now jumping on. When you see something negative in the news, we have a tendency to comment, to defend. So if we've seen someone write something really nasty or someone with just ridiculous views offending people, we'll go in and comment and defend whoever the group are.
I'm Matt Maynard and welcome to the Wellness Report. Over 500,000 people are currently stuck on ADHD waiting lists, losing hours every day to doomscrolling just to cope. Worse, a massive 76% of adults with ADHD say the news cycle is literally making them anxious and sick. So are we using social media to self-medicate an overwhelmed brain? And why are so many people now turning to AI chatbots instead of real human beings when they're struggling? Today I'm joined by TV host and neurodiversity advocate Aidy Smith. We're unpacking the brand new data on news toxicity, why AI therapy is taking over, and how to actually break the doomscroll loop. Let's dive in. Aidy, over 500,000 Britons are stuck on ADHD waiting lists right now. Are people doomscrolling for hours just to give an unmedicated brain a quick dopamine hit?
I mean, if you think about it, we've got, as you say, 500,000 people here sitting on lists in the UK awaiting a diagnosis. And as more news comes out about what ADHD is and they're understanding more about themselves, but not getting the assistance with that, it's a really daunting place to be. And so because they can't sit down and talk to a specialist because there's just simply not the bandwidth within the country to do that, they are turning to social media to be able to kind of console themselves. I mean, there's a multitude of different content creators out there who are creating content around ADHD to, one, help you understand more about it and who you are and why you do what you do. But there's also a lot of content out there which says, oh, if you got ADHD, do you do this, that, and the other? And so I think that people kind of find solace and comfort in the fact that they're not alone by seeing this content. And some of it's good, but some of it isn't good. And I think that's the question that we need to bear in mind when people are going through their phones.
And so from your own experience, when you are scrolling, like you say some of it's good, some of it isn't good, like what percentage would you say is useful and helpful to you?
I would say a minority is useful. And, you know, I think if you look at it this way, that the ADHD brain craves dopamine. So that's one of the things that we go through as individuals. We crave that dopamine hit because we have a lack of dopamine within our systems. And so on one hand, if we're looking at educational content about how to manage ADHD, about coping mechanisms, you know, the guides, the tips, the tricks, that's fantastic because it'll help us on our journey. But equally as much, as soon as our brains start to hook onto one of these little short stories, you know, we keep seeing all these weird videos with fruits walking around having divorces and having little fruit children. And why on earth would that add any value to our day whatsoever? All we seem to see in these videos are AI characters shouting at each other, and it's just not a productive use of time. But when we as ADHDers are on our phones scrolling through, we get hooked into these videos for that little pulse of dopamine.
And so is the healthcare system, would you say, basically forcing 500,000 people to self-diagnose and cope alone?
I mean, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There is not enough support for neurodivergent individuals when it comes to the NHS, and it's something that really, really needs to be evaluated. And what I don't want to do is sit here and kind of, you know, paint everyone with the same brush. There's a lot of people out there working within the neuro kind of inclusion field and the neuro fields within hospitals, within the NHS, who are helping to diagnose individuals. And these people are fantastic because they're working so hard. They're in overdrive. What we need is the people sitting at the top to recognize and to give more resources and to pave the way for more support in these areas. But what we seem to be met with, you know, programs coming out and people doing these reports which hold no foundation, saying that, oh, ADHD is just a fad, it's just something that everyone's now jumping on, which is not the case at all. And if you look at it, in the UK today, there are substantially more people who are given, you know, antidepressants than there are people who are given ADHD meds if you put it on a ratio basis. So if we look at these two things, like, on one end, why is it okay to just like dish out all these antidepressants to people? But on the other hand, God forbid you need some ADHD medication once you've got a diagnosis. That's totally taboo. It's, there's a bit of a irony
Yeah.
going on here.
Do you think like people take ADHD less seriously generally?
I think because it's a new thing in terms of on the awareness scale, yes, absolutely. But ADHD is not a new thing at all. I mean, people have been living with it for so long. And what we're finding now is because more awareness has come out and because people have more coping mechanisms in place, they can feel comfortable with who they are. So that person who has ADHD is no longer just that weird, erratic person or that person who talks too much or gets distracted, but we're seeing all the value in it. I mean, 70% of self-made millionaires are neurodivergent. So there is some value in there somewhere. And if you look at these minds that constantly race, the ADHD mindset, when it finds something that it loves doing, it has a productivity like nothing else on this planet. And when we have a certain idea in our mind, we run with it and we go with it so much farther than anyone else could even think possible.
Right, great. So let's talk about AI as well. So people with ADHD are now twice as likely to dump their emotional problems on an AI chatbot. So why is talking to a bot so much easier, do you think?
I mean, I think it goes back to that list. We've got 500,000 people who can't get an appointment or walk through the door to talk to a specialist to help them on their journey. Where else are they going to turn? If you can't afford to buy the books and if you can't, the actual going to a bookshop and spending £40 on an ADHD guide, then what are you going to do? You're going to turn to either social media or you're going to turn to AI to talk through what you're going through. This is what I'm feeling. Is this normal? These are the reactions I have to things. Is this okay? I'm getting, wound up about this. Am I weird? Am I overreacting? And asking all these questions to an AI chat that can try and give you some solace. But the thing is, AI is fantastic for many things. And when you work with it and understand how to work with it, fantastic, great. And it's not going anywhere at all. But when we don't understand what AI is and we're utilizing it as a professional in a particular field, that's where things can get dangerous. Because, let's say there's 10 people with ADHD sitting in a room. ADHD isn't just one thing where you go, right, you've got ADHD, you're all the same. Everyone is so very different based on their upbringing, based on their own brains, based on their environment that they live in. And what AI just assumes is that everyone is kind of the same because it goes off of a model that it's learned. And every single individual who is on this planet needs one-to-one situation of learning and understanding. And, that's why we talk about all of this research that's been done. And instead of going to AI, I would adopt more of a self-help and self-love perspective. The company that initiated all this research is called Jumble & Co. And the reason they did it is because they wanted to raise awareness to exactly what's going on. They've just launched a series of journals that, the ADHD brain can very much struggle to just get a book and write down thoughts, hence why we're turning to AI. But the difference of these journals is that they give you prompting and leading questions. So immediately as you open the book, and there's about 8 different types of journals, everything from relationships to self-love to wellness to working out to being better to yourself from a motivational standpoint. If you're given a leading question, it's you who decides what you write down when you pen your thoughts down, how you're feeling about yourself, what you're happy about today, what you're anxious about today. And these are all the things that we should be asking ourselves instead of going to AI in order to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah. So let's talk about why bad news is ruining us. So 76% of people with ADHD say the news makes them feel anxious and powerless. So why do you think it is that the bad news hits the neurodivergent brain much harder than everybody else?
So if we look at where we are in the world right now, and there's so many things going on that kind of, are difficult, and there's so much negativity that we find across social media and that we find in the news in general. And then we look at the fact that ADHDers are empaths. So our empathy is through the roof. Our emotional kind of levels are through the roof. We feel everything so much harder. And so if you see something that's happened in another country as, an everyday neurotypical person, you see that and you think, oh, that's really sad. And then you move on with your day. For a neurodivergent, for an ADHD individual, when they see that news, their emotions really connect to it. And so we live with that news for the rest of the day. We keep going back to it. We're just sitting there on the computer doing something and we're thinking, oh my gosh, and you relive that moment again. We connect emotionally to everyone around us. And that's why we're so full of love. And that's why sometimes we can be very intense, and we get overwhelmed and we have to give ourselves a moment of time. But the fact of the matter is we feel things so much more. So that bit of news will live with us for a much longer period of time, therefore internalize our own angst, our own anxiety, our own stress levels, our own cortisol levels. And I mean, the way for us to deal with that is to just not look at that news or give ourselves smaller tidbits of it. But I think one of the things that we do, which really, really can affect us, especially on social media, is when you see something negative in the news, we have a tendency to comment, to defend. So if we've seen someone write something really nasty or someone with just ridiculous views offending people, we'll go in and comment and defend whoever the group are. As soon as we do that, though, that content's going to appear more and more and more on our feed. The best thing you can do to a troll is ignore them, click the 3 dots and see fewer posts. And that will then ensure that you don't see as much recurring content like that on your feed.
Yeah, I mean, it's good advice. The data also shows that 49% of women are overwhelmed by news anxiety compared to 36% of men. I mean, we were talking about neurodivergent people being empaths. Do you think maybe basically women tend to also be more empaths than men?
100%. And I'd say that, if I look at all of the foundations, the groups, the charities that I'm involved with as one, someone with ADHD, and two, the only global TV presenter with Tourette syndrome, the vast majority of the people who are out there who are kind of fighting for the kids and who are at the forefront of the conversation, it's mums, it's women. And so I think there is a much larger degree of them kind of emotionally, like us ADHDers, really bringing that news and living with it a bit more, because they spend so much more time thinking about these things.
We sort of touched there on the kind of content that might upset people when they see it on their timeline. Is there a responsibility on news outlets as well to stop putting out particularly harmful content?
I think so, definitely. It goes back to that age-old question. It's like, if there's so much of it out there, who's going to moderate it? But I think that if there is hurtful content out there, it absolutely needs to be moderated. And I think that the social media platforms and the news agencies, yes, they do absolutely have a responsibility to, at least fact check and see what is being written. And at least if there's malicious comments that are there. I mean, the amount of horrific stuff that I've seen on certain social media platforms, and you click the report button, and I'm talking about some really nasty stuff, like words that you would never ever say to anyone, and then the report comes back with, we don't deem this to be against our terms of service. And you're thinking, but it includes profanity, it includes misleading facts, it includes not only that, but like, again, some of the worst possible phrases that you could ever use, yet they're allowing that to stay on. And I think this is an example of where AI fails us, because that first check is clearly done by an AI bot to understand, what is actually there. But given that first report takes about 72 hours from an AI standpoint, even to come back to you, you can see and how the sheer magnitude of people who must be reporting messages on the platform. And so I think that they do have a huge responsibility when it comes to that. And, if the amount of mental health angst that people will be going through because of their failures to moderate content and to moderate comments will be huge.
Aidy, you host global TV shows and you've got ADHD and Tourette's. What is your kind of methods to be productive, to not succumb to the doomscroll loop?
I think that having a kind of having structure in place has been absolutely huge. And so as an ADHDer, the worst thing you can tell us is to do something for a certain period of time, because, we want to be our own boss. We want to do our own thing. But when I get up every single morning, I will meditate. And I don't tell myself I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. I'll sit down, put my earphones on, and I'll meditate for as little or as long as I want. because then I'm feeling rested and I'm feeling in a good place. Having a cold shower, so having a hot shower, but the last minute, make it cold, it gives you such an adrenaline spike and a dopamine spike. It's just fantastic for anyone. I would say
Really?
that's
That's
absolutely brilliant.
interesting, yeah.
One of the best things I've ever done. 1 minute of cold shower,
hate
last
cold
thing you
water.
do. Oh, I used to, but you get into the
Yeah.
habit of it and you can't
Right.
live without it. And then finally, it takes me back full circle to the reason the research was done. Journaling. Journaling is one of the most cathartic things you can do. The reason that we often get so wound up in life, so irritated, so angry, so upset, is because of a lack of self-respect and self-love. And yes, we can talk to other people, and therapy, talking to another person in terms of the therapist, you can't replace that. And I think that that's brilliant for your own peace of mind. The other thing that I absolutely think every single person should be doing, even if they say it's difficult, is journaling. And getting a journal that speaks to you, because it's your thoughts going on paper. You're having a conversation with yourself. You can't stand, look into the mirror and talk to yourself. I mean, you can, and actually it builds a lot of charisma and confidence. And that's another thing I recommend. But a lot of people don't feel confident doing that, talking to yourself in the mirror. But the best way to do that is to get a journal and to talk to yourself through the pages. That's how you learn to love yourself. That's how you learn to respect yourself more. And that's how you learn to build boundaries around you, to have a better quality of life, and to notice when you're doing behaviors or things like doom scrolling.
Yeah.
When you're journaling about it and you start scrolling afterwards to your phone, you think, nope, do you know what? I'm going to reinforce what I wrote in my journal. I'm not going to continue doing this. Phone down.
Yeah.
And then you go back to what you were meant to be doing. So yeah, journaling, huge.
Wow. What are the kind of biggest misconceptions do you think that people have about people that endure ADHD?
I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that people always have about ADHD is that we just erratically run around and that we're, always so easily distracted and that we can never get anything done. Whereas, we talked about the stats, 70% of self-made millionaires are neurodivergent. And so we're clearly doing something right. And I think that when it comes to organizations, there was a leadership survey done about 6 years ago, and I think about 36% of all of the respondents, the managers within it, said they'd never hire someone with ADHD because they didn't feel that they could control them within the workplace. So they just kind of run away from it. But the irony is that, when we do work on things that we absolutely love, and when we're in a job that we find really thrilling, we go through the roof in terms of productivity, and the amount of results and efficiency that we will bring into that organization are just absolutely huge. So I think, if we're talking about employers, for example, I'd say rather than hiring someone to tick a box and then, sending in the HR to say, hi, how can we make you feel comfortable? What things can we put in place to make you feel comfortable? It's, okay, how can we make you thrive? How can I get as much out of you as possible with you loving your job? What do you need to make that happen? We don't just want to exist. We want to soar. That's what we want to do.
So if someone was watching this now and they're stuck on a waiting list on the NHS and they're, bottling everything up, maybe they haven't even really, told their friends and family about what they think is potentially wrong with them. What is the single, best piece of advice you could give to them today? How can they protect their brain?
I'd say talk to other people who are going through the same thing, because you'll find so much solace in one another. And, it goes back to that saying. So we've got our social media account called Dislabeled. And on Dislabeled, we're constantly pushing out content that is, at the beginning, we were talking about the good kind of content. It's the guides, it's the tips, it's self-management, self-regulation, self-love. If you surround yourself with a group of people who are going through the same thing, you can all learn from each other. So you can learn what was the best journal to get, or what meditation worked for me, or where was I feeling out of place, or how do I better manage social media. You can get advice from people going through the same thing, but above and beyond that, you are able to understand and know that you belong, you exist, and you're a part of a community. And I live by two quotes. One, there's strength in the struggle. Every single hardship we go through, we end up learning something from it. And that's what we should focus on. Not the, oh, woe is me, but the, wow, I learned this. And the other one is we're only stronger together. So finding your unit, finding your tribe, the people who really get you, is the best form of medicine, because it's love, it's self-love and community and understanding. And as humans, that is what we crave the most.
Absolutely, well said. Aidy, can you just quickly tell the viewer about your Amazon show?
Absolutely. So about 8 years ago, I was a child actor, and I had 2 series of the show that came out. And during the second series, I started developing tics from my Tourette's. 2 weeks later, I was cast off the show and I was kicked out of my acting school, dropped by my representation. It was not a good place to be in. And for anyone watching who has Tourette's in their life, they'll understand how difficult it can be. As an adult 8 years ago, I wanted to get back on TV. No commissioner would touch me because they don't believe people with Tourette's can be on TV. They think we'll waste production budget or they'll have to edit our tics out. We are just people who do a great job at presenting who happen to have Tourette's. So I thought, right, as I do in every bit of life, if someone closes a door, I'll go out, I'll buy the wood, the nails and the hammer, build my own door and walk through it. So I created my own series, a travel series called The Three Drinkers, which aired on Amazon Prime after they took it on about 8 years ago. And now we've got 3 seasons that are out. So it's a travel series where I basically go across the world with friends, checking out the best alcohol, checking out the best food, the best experiences, the best culture, and meeting some remarkable people along the way.
Wonderful. Right. Be sure to check that out. Aidy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you ever so much. Pleasure to chat with you.
Pleasure.